Hello everyone and welcome to the RMTV Women's Podcast, and we are coming to you from a bit of a different setting this week. We have been invited down to the BBC studios in Manchester by the lovely Emma, as you can see. We'll still do the usual podcast type of stuff, but firstly I just want to talk about the big news that was announced back end of last week. Liverpool versus Everton, Merseyside derby at Anfield on the 17th of November. How amazing is it to finally have a game at Anfield for the women?
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for this for a while. I thought Liverpool and Everton, to be honest, are probably the two biggest clubs that hadn't yet played at the men's stadium. So I think it was kind of inevitable that Liverpool were going to play at Anfield. And when I spoke to Vicky Jepson in August, I think it was, end of August, she'd said that, you know, the club were in talks about having a game there. So it was no surprise, but it was a welcome one because I think it's a great occasion. It's going to be probably one of the biggest games in Liverpool women's history. The last time they played there was in the FA Cup semi-final. It was at 2013.
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
Yeah, and they lost that one, so hopefully they can get a win this time.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's been a while since we've been there, and then obviously with the whole City and versus United at the Etihad, Chelsea played at Stamford Bridge. You had the Tottenham versus West Ham game. It seems to be that it's just a matter of time for Liverpool to announce it, and we've been saying for a while, when's it going to happen, and there's been a few occasions where there's already been international breaks this season and it didn't, but there's no other perfect occasion than the Merseyside derby to have it, really, is there?
Well, that's it, and going back to that conversation I had with Vicky in August, she said that the club wanted to make sure it was the right fixture, and I think that's key with this because it costs a lot of money to run events like this. You know, I've heard that the game at Tottenham is costing over £150,000.
Really?
So, you know, if you're gonna do a game at a men's stadium, then you've got to make sure it's the right occasion. And I think what better one than doing a Merseyside derby against Everton. Everton have been in good form this season, so it's going to be a tricky one. But yeah, it's going to be a good day. I think the only thing that could affect things is the fact that you have got that Tottenham Arsenal game going on the same weekend, and obviously I think it's Chelsea are hosting Manchester United as well. So there's some big games that weekend. But yeah, why not? Yeah,
and then so in terms of crowds, then obviously we've seen, you know, so many people have jumped on the bandwagon of women's sport this year, obviously off the back of the World Cup and stuff like that. But are you expecting a sellout crowd or close to a sellout crowd for Anfield for this game?
I'm not expecting a sellout. I don't think the club are expecting a sellout.
No.
I think, me personally, I'd be happy with about 10,000.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's not. I mean, you look at Man City and they got, what was it, 31,500, and that was obviously the WSL record.
Yeah.
Stamford Bridge gave out the free tickets and got 24,000. But going back to the other fixtures that are on that day, and given the fact that there's a North London derby at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is obviously a new stadium that everyone wants to go to, I do think that will play a part. So I think if we get anywhere between 10 and 15,000, then I'd be really happy with that.
Yeah, I think any Liverpool fan would be happy with that. It's just, as like a women's football fan, you just wanted it at Anfield, and you're expecting sellout crowds and loads of amazing things to happen on the day. You just want the recognition of the team playing there finally. Yeah,
and that's the main thing, isn't it? Is that these women are, you know, incredible professionals, and they deserve to be playing in front of more people than, what was it, about 980 that went to the game on the weekend. And it's like, come on, they deserve better than that. And this is an opportunity for the regular men's football fans who have season tickets at Anfield and who are members, who, you know, can use the international break, use the opportunity to go and support the women in Merseyside derby.
Yeah, and I think it being at Anfield's amazing, because I think the fact that we do play at Prenton Park over the water, you have to unless you have a car, it's difficult to get there. I think that's a main factor in how a lot of the women don't get a lot of attendance for their match. I think that's a big contributing factor towards such low attendances at our games.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's the case kind of across the board in WSL as well. Everton are the same.
Yeah, but they play at Southport,
exactly,
that's just silly.
And it's not Liverpool. They're so far away from Goodison and Anfield respectively. But so it will be interesting to see how it affects the regular women's football fans, whether or not they like the games being played at Anfield. But you know, as for me, as somebody who, you know, watches men's and women's football, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. As a one-off, I don't think it should be played there every week.
No.
But for the right occasion, for the derby, it's a great occasion.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously, you know, it hasn't been the best season for Liverpool women so far. We're still awaiting our first win in the WSL, but there'd be no better time. Obviously, we've got a game in between that, but no better time to get your first win in Merseyside derby at Anfield.
Yeah, I actually asked the exact same question to Vicky last week when I was at Anfield, and I did say to her, is there added pressure on the occasion given the fact that it's been a poor start to the season for Liverpool? And she did say, she said, you know, there isn't added pressure, but obviously we would like to get the win. And I mean, the momentum, if you come off that game with a victory in front, you know, in front of hopefully a big crowd at Anfield against your Merseyside derby rivals who have been in form, that would do a hell of a lot for the season. So I think if you're a Liverpool fan, I think probably going to be a little bit worried before the game. But it's a derby, anything can happen.
Anything can happen, that's very true. Form sort of goes out the window in these type of games, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, as I was saying, not the best season so far. What is it that you think Liverpool need to work on the most? What do you think's causing us so many issues?
I mean, I've been saying this for a few seasons now. Got to be careful here. I don't think Vicky can do much more with the squad that she's got, and that's no disrespect to the squad. They're a young, talented group, but that's what they are, young. And I think they need that quality. They need that international quality, and then you're not going to get that unless you get investment or, you know, you get real kind of involvement into the women's team. So yeah, I think the club as a whole need to have a look at the women's side and go, right, how much do we want to really invest in this team? You look at the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea and Man City and obviously Manchester United now. The commitment that they're showing to their women's sides and how that is benefiting them on the pitch. Obviously we've got, in terms of like England internationals, we've only really got Melissa Lawley, who's senior, and she's in and out.
She's only on the cusp of it.
Exactly, so it's, you know, you look back to even 3 seasons ago, you had the likes of Siobhan Chamberlain, Alex Greenwood, Casey Stoney before she retired. You know, and you look at that squad on paper, and now you look at this one and you think, God, there's such a big gap in terms of experienced quality. That's what this team needs. You know, the likes of Niamh Charles is, you know, that's brilliant for the future, but it's difficult because unless they get results, unless they get a little bit of enjoyment and progress now, it's going to be hard to keep hold of those players.
Well, during the Birmingham game, the commentator said, you know, it was only 4 or 5 seasons ago that both Birmingham and Liverpool were challenging for the title. And if you look at both the teams now, bottom 2 in the league, not really performing. The players, a complete overhaul of players and managers and stuff like that. You're thinking, if you're trying to build something, you can't just chop and change it every season. And obviously we went through the whole big massive change last season. The squad was sort of settled, you've brought in a few new players again, but then it still seems to not be clicking. And you're exactly right, and the club need to look at the women's team as a not just the footballing side, but for the marketing side of it as well, because you've just come back off a World Cup, one of the biggest tournaments this year, well, for a number of years, record attendances and stuff like that, and yet you're still not, you know, trying to develop that team. And overall, the best players win your trophies and win your games, and at the minute, like, we've got a great young squad, but that's for the future. You need to talk about what's in the present. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair to the club, and especially to Peter Moore, who I think is
brilliant.
brilliant.
Yeah,
and you know, they went on the pre-season tour with the men this summer, which is the first time they had the first full team group photo. Now they're playing the game at Anfield, so they're definitely making steps. I would just like to see it done a little bit quicker. But,
I agree.
But yeah, we'll see what kind of investment comes out in the summer, because I've got a hell of a lot of respect for Vicky, what she's doing with this squad. Obviously she took over from Neil Redfern, that very brief stint at the start of last season, and was sort of thrown into it a little bit, and I think she's kind of settled things down, and they look to have made a bit of progress that season, but the problem is that every other team sort of in the lower half of the table kind of did the same, and then Tottenham and Manchester United come in and they're brilliant, brilliant squad, so they were always going to come in, and as such Liverpool have been pushed down the pecking order.
What do you think it is then that Liverpool need to do in order to entice European players, international players to come over and play for Liverpool?
I think they need to have a clear game plan of where they want the club to go in the future. I think that was a problem with Neil Redfern. I don't know too much about it, but what I have heard is that he was sort of maybe giving a promise of this is where we'd like the club to go, this is the kind of involvement you as manager we'd like to have, and I don't think from his opinion the club didn't deliver on that front. So, and that's just what I've heard. I don't want that's very much hearsay, so he might think differently, the club might think differently, but that's kind of the impression that I've been given, and I think if you want to change things, then the club needs to have a clear sort of philosophy. This is what we want to do, this is how we're going to do it, and actually deliver it and follow through with it, so they can attract players, managers or whoever, or keep Vicky, but just let her know what's going on. And if you say to these players, look, this is what we're going to do, we're going to make this investment, we're going to throw this into marketing, we want to aim to do this by 2025, then players will think, I want to be a part of that. Obviously wages come into it as well, but I do think that the majority of footballers in the women's game, as long as they're being paid a fair amount for, in terms of their quality and the amount of work that they put in, I think for them it's more important to see where the club's going.
Yeah, definitely, because it's all about progress, isn't it? And obviously you've had the World Cup and stuff like that, and you've seen the rise in interest and stuff like that, but you can't just rely on just your international teams. You need to, your domestic teams need to step up now and say, wow, there's really something there that we can do. Why not do it? Why not grab it with both hands and just go for it? And yeah, you're exactly right in saying the club are making steps, and you can see that, but just sometimes just want them to be that little bit quicker and just
needs
doing
to carry on. And I think that's it. And I definitely don't want to put a negative spin on the Anfield thing because it's fantastic.
Oh, it's funny.
But like I said, I think they were one of the last sort of teams to do it.
Well, yeah.
So I would have liked to have seen that a bit earlier, even in pre-season maybe. But yeah, they're making those steps, and it's interesting actually. You mentioned there about the sort of the national and then the domestic. I think Phil Neville kind of even alluded slightly in his press conference yesterday that there is a gap between, and he didn't directly say this. This was sort of what I interpreted from what he was saying, was that there is like a gap between kind of the experienced domestic players and then the experienced international players. And I do agree to some extent. I do think you should be picking WSL players on form as well, but I do think it helps to have that international experience, and until you bridge that gap, then it's very hard for kind of the bottom half of the WSL. It's a bit like the Premier League these days, where the top six is getting a bit. It's like that kind of a little bit in WSL, where Chelsea, Man City and Arsenal are kind of just out there on the front, and obviously United are joining them, you'd think. But
well, on the subject of England then, obviously the squad announcement yesterday, final, international games of 2019. He seems to be picking pretty much the same squad each time. Do you think as we get into the new year, obviously with the Olympics next year and stuff like that, do you think it's pretty much set in stone of what type of players he wants to go to the Olympics already, or do you think once it gets to the new year, new players will start getting the call up?
I think the people who are on the radar to go to the Olympics will know. The people who are on the brink will know, and the people who are missing out will probably know as well. But I think I would like to see more players in the squad on form. Like I've said before, I think you need some experience in there, definitely. And obviously, so the squad announcement yesterday, there was 17 players in that squad who went to the World Cup. That's probably a little bit too much for me.
Okay.
I'd like to see some more looking ahead to the future, because Neville talks about this 2-year plan, which obviously kind of like with a break in between of a 1 year plan to the Olympics, but it is mainly essentially about the Euros.
Yeah.
And I don't see how some members of the current squad are part of that 2 year plan, because in my head I don't see them as players that, you know, should really be in the Olympic squad or will be around for the Euros.
Okay. Yeah. Well, to be honest, I agree, because you look at the squad and you think just the same group of players all the time. There's loads of, you know, talented English women's footballers around in and around all the different leagues.
Yeah.
It just seems to be focusing on the same ones all the time, and obviously you've got to think about squad harmony and stuff like that. But if it's not for a competitive fixture, why not bring all those players in?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point that I'm making. I think if you've got these friendlies, then use them to, I mean, I don't want to say experiment, because he's kind of been doing that, but not in the ways that you'd like. So, you know, playing Lucy Bronze in midfield,
and then Rachel
I'm
Daly
massively
right back.
against.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm a big no-no to that. But he will argue they're friendlies, this is the time to do it, which is understandable. But I think the problem now is that, given the poor results recently, obviously as media we've been asking whether Neville's under pressure, and I think he's definitely feeling it, even if he says he isn't. He's obviously had outbursts at journalists in press conferences, and so you can see he's feeling it. So I think he's maybe playing it a little bit safe with this squad by going with, you know, well-renowned international players, which again is completely understandable. I'd like to see the likes of like Chloe Kelly in there from Everton.
She definitely deserved a call up.
Yeah,
for
Leah
these
Golson
friendlies.
from Man United. Yeah, there's players in there in WSL who are performing very, very well, who I'd like to see in that squad.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, finally to end, I'm just going back to Liverpool for a minute. For the rest of the season, what do you think their main concern is? What do you think they want to achieve most this season?
But Liverpool?
Yeah.
I think the main aim has to be to avoid going down, really. They're not in a position where they can challenge, I don't think, for any of the domestic cups.
No.
I don't think they can really bridge the gap on any of the top teams. So I think for them it's just a case of beating the teams in and around them near the bottom and staying up, and then getting through this season, and then really, like I say, really pump some investment into it in the summer. Use the name of the club. This is where I think, obviously there are some women's teams like the London City Lionesses who obviously separated from Millwall to have their own identity, but this is where I feel a club like Liverpool Women can really thrive off the fact that they are connected to Liverpool as a football club, because they've got, and Vicky was saying this last week when I spoke to her, they've got this like huge global audience and fan base that they can really tap into if they really wanted to. You know, you've got thousands and thousands of Liverpool fans across the UK, millions across the you know, across Europe and globally. So to get 900 to a WSL game is, in my opinion, just not good enough. And you know, so they need to get through the season, get to next summer, and then invest in it.
Perfect. Yeah, I completely agree. Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks,
it's
for having me.
been a pleasure. Remember to like the video, comment and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all. Well, I'll see you next week. But Amy's not here. But yeah, I'll see you next week for a brand new podcast. Ta-ra.